So I remember when I started working, I was a teenager. I was only 18 years old. So somebody sends me this poster. They tell me, oh, there's this TV station that is looking for young presenters. And so I think you'd be a perfect fit for it. I auditioned, went through the competition, weeks and weeks of being trained. There was evictions, and then I won the competition with two others. So now the work began, right? We're given this show, and we're told, okay, you are the presenter, so now take it up. And I had no idea what TV was really about. I thought it's just showing up. I just show up, I smile, I speak on camera, and that's it. But I didn't take time to read and research to say, what can I say on TV? What shouldn't I say on TV? How do I create that rapport with my co hosts? How do I interact with the guests? Because sometimes the guests would contact us and they say, okay, we're coming to feature on your show? Is there a certain dress code? And because none of us really took time to research, we just told them, no, just wear anything. It's entertainment, just wear anything. And sadly, and funny enough, people would come with ripped jeans from the thigh to the knee. The jean is ripped everywhere. And we had a background that could not permit us to wear certain colors. And we didn't communicate that to the guests because we didn't research. So these guests would come just wearing anything, any color. And now you'd find that because the guest is not wearing the appropriate attire, you would find that the guest would be a bobblehead, the head would be floating, and then people would be like, oh, where's the rest of the body? And so I would get in trouble for that. And I thought my supervisor just had a problem, because he would get so angry and he would say, Diana, these are things you're supposed to know. You're a presenter here, you now work here. These are things that you had to research on for you to understand. You inform our guests, this is the dress code, these are the do's and don'ts. And at that time, I was quite young, I didn't understand anything. I thought my supervisor was just being tough. And I would tell myself, no, I'm young, I'm a teenager, he's supposed to be the bigger person. But then I didn't understand that I was also giving him a tough time because it was up to me to understand what the organization is about, to understand what my work is about, what is required of me, what do I bring to the table. And so without realizing, I thought he was building or creating a toxic environment for me. But then I was creating that toxic environment for myself because I never had the interest to get to research, to understand what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to get rid of? What kind of attitude do I have when I show up? I don't just show up, How you show up also matters. So for me, it was just, I'm showing up and that's it. And so I really just love the fact that you emphasized on understanding what your organization is about and just how to represent the organization.
Indeed. I think that a lot of that happens, not just to young people, even to older people, maybe more experienced, because they have lost that zeal or desire to perfect their craft. Yes, you won the competition, and you won the competition around its parameters. Now you have a job to do. You have a show to present, and it's beyond you just showing up and asking your questions or vibing, whatever it is that you call it. Um, there's research to be done. What kind of colors will work? Um, and usually somebody else will not tell you that, this is wrong until it's too late.
Yes.
But you have to have that interest, that intention to perfect your art. I think that when you were going now to do the work, there was something at the back of your mind asking you, do you know exactly what you're going to do? That's enough to motivate you to want to know more about the profession, to want to be like your supervisor, if your supervisor was also a presenter, to be like the people that you have been watching on TV over the years and you think that they're inspiring. What is it that makes them tick?
Yes.
How do they prepare to come on set? How is their mind prepared? How much knowledge do they gather about the person they are going to interview or the subject? And so there is a lot that we have to do as individuals to ensure that we show up right.
Mm.
Investing in yourself is very important. And I started doing that, I think, early in my career, but mostly after joining the corporate world. I always thought that the corporate world was not as exciting as the private practice. And so there was a lot of reluctance on my part. But then when I got in there, I found that it was exciting. But then I started asking myself, is this all I want to be as an in house counsel?
Mm.
And that question drove me to improve myself. I wanted to be a leader in the corporate. What is it that I needed to be a leader? I wanted to get intimate with the practice, not just of law,
Yes.
but of governance. And I think over the years, I started questioning myself even more, wanting to be T shaped, getting professional qualifications that are outside my comfort zone, but relevant for me to be able to discharge my function. And then later on, I decided to turn my expertise into what is now known as a personal brand, as a product of something that I have built over the years. And so intention is very important. It's important that you are intentional about your growth, you're intentional about how you show up. And I think to just amplify showing up um, in relation to what the expectations are. And that's where that code comes in. What are the expectations of the organization in terms of my dress, in terms of how I communicate and collaborate with my colleagues,
Yes.
how I deliver on my key performance indicators, um, how I approach people, how I manage situations, all that can be described as a code of behavior. And unfortunately, you will not find a code so detailed in terms of you've got to be confident in yourself, you've got to know all this. Slowly, those of us who have read my book, I do speak about those soft issues about governance that have helped me to grow, and I want to share those things. But you will not really find a document or a policy that goes into that kind of detail. But thank God for podcasts, not just this one, but I think there is a push all over the world to educate each other on those secrets that you need to know to be able to deliver. And this particular podcast, I think, focuses on some of those things, knowing yourself, knowing your role, and living up to it. Um, the codes that are, there in the company or in the organization, like a code of ethics, your disciplinary code, they may speak to some of these things. For example, a code of ethics will say you will not behave in such a way as to bring the organization into disrepute.
Yes.
And disrepute is broad. So if you come to the office improperly dressed and everybody knows you work for this company, um, people will relate you to the company. And if you are not looking reputable or you're not behaving in a reputable manner, that will be matched to the organization.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, it has really reminded me of there's this certain quote on corporate governance. I think it should be by Lou Gassner that says the real mechanism of corporate governance is the involvement of the owners of the organization. Yeah. So, there are times where the organization, quite all right, might have this code and they might communicate that code to the employees or the potential employees. But then I think what also helps the employees or the actors of that in that organization is looking at how the the superiors in that organization are carrying themselves. Because I will read, I will do my research, and I'll tell myself, okay, this is what the organization stands for. But then also, what will influence me to act accordingly is how my supervisors behaving, how is my manager behaving, how is my boss behaving. If, for example, I notice my supervisor just comes to work at any time, they dress inappropriately. You touched on dress code. My supervisor just dresses anyhow. I will one day tell myself, if that day I don't feel like dressing the right way, I will say, oh, my supervisor came to work with ripped jeans. So it's fine, I can wear ripped jeans. And then when I am called into a meeting, with the disciplinary committee, the first thing I'm going to say is, oh, I behave like this because my supervisor behaved like this. And because this is my boss, I have to follow what he does. So I thought this is okay, you know? So I think that is also a huge problem that some organizations, if not most of them, could be experiencing. They're having a tough time with people understanding the code, with people understanding how do I show up, how do I represent the organization. It's because they're looking at the people in the top positions. How is this person carrying themselves in a situation where we have a problem and it needs to be sorted out? How is my manager sorting this problem out? If my manager is always yelling and using aggression, when I am now speaking to my juniors, I would think, oh, this is how you sort out a problem. You need to use aggression, you need to yell, you need to scold, and this is how people will understand. And so instead of building the organization, it makes it crumble. Why? Because the owners of that organization or the top people in that organization are not being the key players. They're not quite involved. So it now builds that divided environment. And now somebody will say, I'm reading this, but this is not what I'm seeing. So now they begin to struggle between, how do I show up? How am I representing the organization? So also, in as much as we, the people that are shaping the organization, working in the organization, in as much as we have that role to read, research, be intentional about understanding the code of the organization, what is the how are the top people carrying themselves? The organization itself, is it playing a key role in building or is it breaking?
That's very, very interesting and very hard hitting. And I think it focuses or it points to culture. What is your culture in your organization? Yes, we can talk about a code and all that, but what is that code of behavior? It's essentially the culture that we carry.
Yes.
What are our values as an organization? And are we aligning our behavior to the values of the organization? What are your core values? What is your culture? What is your ethic? And those are the things that will give you what you need to be able to show up for your organization.
Yes.
And so, does your organization have a culture of aggression as a way of uh, getting across to people or communicating? Is that working? Does it align with your objectives? Maybe not, and mostly not, because uh, organizational behavior is a science, and it has certain points of emphasis and certain principles.
Mm.
One of the biggest principles is that the people that are operating the organization are human beings
Yes.
with human traits. So just by you saying aggression has got a certain intonation, and human beings are quite averse to aggression, depending on where it's being applied. We are emotional people. As a species, we think, we feel, and even as we are operating organizations, we should be mindful that these are thinking and feeling human beings, and what kind of behavior will preserve us as human beings, even as we are working for organizations. So that's a critical question to ask ourselves. And depending from organization to organization, culture may be different, but there are certain things that are general. Why? Because the world is not disconnected, it's interconnected. And therefore, you will interface with somebody who works for Google and you work somewhere else, or somebody who works for the Bank of Zambia and you work somewhere else. How will you conduct yourselves so that you are able to do business? That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And speaking of culture, I think I have come to learn and realize that, well, in our country, Zambia,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the reading culture is really bad. I can assure you that we have, I would say, even 45% of people that will actually take the interest or the time to do their research,
Mm-hmm.
to learn, to read more. I think we have gotten so used to a system where we want to be spoon fed. We want to
Mm-hmm.
be given things on a silver spoon
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, now you are working here. Now you are part of us. Here's what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you're supposed to carry yourself. In this situation, if this happens, this is what you're supposed to do. Forgetting that it's not just about me working. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just about me being a part of a certain organization. It's also about building myself and building the organization. I want value from the organization, but also, am I bringing value to the
Value.
organization? Yes. So we really lack that reading culture. We feel reading is boring, reading is so
Mm-hmm.
outdated. If I want to learn something, a trend will come on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
We're so addicted to our phones. Okay, if I want to know this, maybe I should just Google it. Maybe I should just, but
Watch a video.
yes. But then you'll find that the information that we actually need, the deep, deep information that is going to build us and help us become better people and shape the organization, is in those books that we are running away from. So, do you think the reading culture plays a key role in how certain organizations have just crumbled today?
Well, yes, to the extent that there's so much information out there, and it's up to us to access it
Yes.
and internalize it. But what is it that stops us? There is a saying, I don't know whether it's still a saying, about Africans that if you want to hide anything from an African, put it in a book. Um, like I said, I don't know.
Mm.
I read enough, but um, that's just what it is. If you have a poor reading culture,
Mm.
then things will be hidden from you
That's true.
in a book or on the internet, but not in a video.
Mm.
You need to go to those papers that have been written by people and articles, and you are not interested, but you'd rather watch a video. And what you don't understand is that that person who has made the video that you're watching has done a lot of research.
Yes, yes.
That's why they're able to compress their knowledge into the 4 minutes that you enjoy. So there's really no shortcut, and it really depends on what would you like to be. Would you like to be average? Because if you'd like to be average, don't read,
Mm.
just do the minimum. And this reminds me of one of my articles, very recent, where I spoke about a company secretary
Mm.
and how the law has prescribed a qualification. For you to be a company secretary, you have to be either a lawyer or chartered, or not a lawyer, just a lawyer, a legal practitioner, a chartered accountant, or someone with the Institute of Chartered Secretaries certification. And I emphasized that those prescriptions are minimal.
Yes.
They'll probably get you the job, but I'm not sure whether they will, on their own, help you keep the job because you have to be a corporate governance gatekeeper. You have to be an advisor to the board on law, on governance. You have to be that person that is the custodian of company policy and instruments. And so, if you don't understand the company policies, then you will not be able to advise the board whether they have a
Yes.
policy on this or not. So, in as much as it's out of your league, like a finance policy, I go through the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, or most of the time, I actually find myself in those policies because I'm affected by the policy. But it's that drive from you yourself to do more than the minimum, um, to be able to discharge your function. And so it's very important that you understand your role, also understand the organization and its expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion around dressing is a very touchy discussion
Yes.
because dressing is an expression, and the Constitution protects your right to express yourself either through dress or or other things, the what you can say within the framework of the freedoms. And I think that's why it is a topic that organizations are very careful around.
Yes.
And for me, it's about striking that balance between the needs of the organization, the freedom of expression, and what the organization is expected to deliver as a result of that balance. What are we delivering as an organization? Having balanced the freedom of the individual and the needs of the organization. And so that is probably why you find that there are broad provisions Earlier on in my brand activities, I did speak about coming up with an organizational behavior code. And I still have that desire. I did set up a committee of quite a number of professionals. I think there were 40, and we kind of divided ourselves amongst the corporate governance side and the organizational behavior side. On the corporate governance side, I'm sure you're aware that there's the National Corporate Governance Code for Zambia, which I have gone through and provided commentary. I think it's an admirable effort on the part of our country to come up with a code of governance for Zambian corporates and organizations. But I still think that there's space to look at the behavior side and recommend some kind of behavior.
Yes.
And we could speak to the dress code in a balanced manner um, in order for even the organization that cannot speak for itself to be represented appropriately. Yeah.
And just as we conclude, you've reminded me of something, yes? When you spoke of being average, if you want to be average, you'll just be there, you won't
Mm-hmm.
take the time to read, you won't take the time to research. So I remember sitting down this one time and I'm telling myself, I don't want to be an ordinary person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be average. How do I put myself out there? How do I um, make myself extraordinary?
Mm.
And then at first I didn't have answers until I decided to go online and do my research. And I came across this video of a certain businesswoman, and she said, if you want to be great, you need to read.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just read things that are limited to your field. Read different books, of course, in line with your field, but not just so limited to your field.
Mm-hmm.
Read different books, books on etiquette, books on growth, books on personal branding,
Mm-hmm.
books on understanding. And that is how you become great, because we are seated here today, we are having this discussion because we read, we did our research. Had I not read, I wouldn't be here today. If I was to meet you earlier on, let's say 2, 3 years ago, and then you tell me I want you to co-host this podcast with me, I probably was going to say no because I would have known to say I'm not ready. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have what it takes. I'm not fully equipped
Mm.
to sit here and get to share information. But then over the years, I have learned that if you want to be great, you need to do a lot of reading. You
Mm-hmm.
need to do a lot of research. And growth is not easy, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Personal growth and just growth in an organization is not something that's easy. So honestly, this really came at the right time.
Mm.
And I mean, the more you read, the more you get to understand that things will align. Even in the organization, the more you get to read, the more you get to understand the code, you get to know how to represent the organization. And it just happens at the right time. Things will eventually align.
Mm.
Mm.
Yes, I think that if you want to be average, go right ahead. But if you want to get to places, you need to invest in that effort.
Yes.
And a lot of us are afraid to say what you just said. I want to be extraordinary. Um, Great countries have become as great as they are because people believed that they could be extraordinary and made that effort, which put their country on the world map. And so, even from a personal perspective, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to be more. Challenge yourself to be great and greater. Challenge yourself to be a person of excellence. There is nothing wrong with you striving for perfection or striving for excellence. I think that that is the epitome of self actualization. When you feel that you have put in or you're putting in your best, it's a great feeling. It's greater than the feeling of having a lot of money.
Yes.
Something about that satisfaction that just comes to your mind as a result of having achieved something and achieving it in the best way that you can. Excellence can't always be touched. It can
Yes.
be felt
Mm.
by a human being, to say, I have put in my best and I feel great about it. And I think it's a very healthy thing if you do it in a um, emotionally and ethically intelligent manner. It will give you a sense of peace. I think knowing what I know and striving to know more, I think gives me more energy. I actually feel younger than I am,
Mm.
over 50, but still willing to learn. I have that zeal, and it's because I want to be extraordinary. I hope that one day I'll be extraordinary, and
Indeed.
I'll keep pushing, and that will make people see me and help me with my journey. Thank you.
Very true. And
Yeah.
what's that saying? Knowledge is power, right?
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
I've forgotten the the owner of that quote, but yeah,
Hmm.
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is
And
power.
I absolutely look forward to more discussions, honestly.
So do I.
Mm.
How was it? Was I scary? Did I eat you up? Or I
No,
don't know.
no, was I shaking? No?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so it went great. Thank you so much for joining me as my co host. And thank you to our audience for taking
Yes.
time to listen to us. And we hope to get some feedback from
Mm.
you so that we can continue to improve and strive for excellence.
Yes,
Thank you so
definitely.
much.